Good morning, everybody. This is Stephen Pugh of the Home Bible College. It is January the 27th, and we're beginning our readings today in Exodus chapter 16. Now that Israel was secure in the wilderness and had found a water supply, they needed food in very large quantities. Then they faced an attack by the Amalekites, and lastly, Moses appoints the first judges. When the children of Israel travelled from Elim, they came to the wilderness of Sin. It's just spelled as S-I-N. It's very difficult to imagine the absolute desolation of this area. The people grumbled at Moses from bringing them to this terrible place. They said, if only we could have died in Egypt. We had meat stews and bread enough, and now we want to die of hunger. Then the Lord said, I'm going to rain bread from heaven. This was to be a test to see if Israel will keep my laws. They were to only collect bread for 6 days, and on the 7th day they were to not collect bread, they were to rest. On the 6th day the Lord would provide twice as much. They had bread in the morning and flesh in the evening. In the evening, quails came up and covered the whole ground. And in the morning, a dew came up out of the ground, and when the sun arose, the moisture evaporated. And what was left was a very small thing like hoarfrost. It was round and white. When they saw it, the people said, what is it? And this was the name that they gave it. The word was it is manna. Moses explained that it was that it was 1 omer per person. Now an omer was 3.64 litres in fluid or dry measure. The magnitude of this provision is phenomenal. Every day there was as much as 3.6 million litres of manna provided for Israel. Those that gathered a lot had nothing over, and those that gathered a little found that they had no lack. They could not leave the manna until the next day, because if they did, it would breed worms. They gathered it fresh and new every morning. Now the manna tasted like wafers with honey. Moses took an omer and put it in a pot to keep it as a souvenir. It was put into the Ark of the Covenant, and it never went off. It always remained fresh. This provision of the Lord lasted, listen to this, for 40 years. Incredible. When the children of Israel pitched in Rephidim, there was no water, and the people asked Moses what they were going to drink. And Moses gathered the people at Horeb, and when he hit the rock, water came out of it, a pure stream. It's possible to go, and by the way, and have a look at the rock at Horeb today, and you'll see there a dried up riverbed, and yet it comes out of a rock standing in the middle of a mountain. Amazing. Next Israel faced an enemy, that is the Amalekites. Moses told Joshua to appoint the army and went up to pray to a mountain to pray. Aaron and Hur held up his hands while they prayed, and they had victory while he held up his hands. Then Moses built an altar and called it Jehovah Nissi, which means the Lord our banner. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came to see him. This must have been a wonderful reunion. He brought his wife Zipporah and his 2 sons. Great things had happened since they last met, and Jethro found him overburdened with dealing with the multiplicity of day-to-day issues. He told him frankly that he would wear out if he didn't delegate some of the work. He said, train and appoint a group of reliable men who will rule the people. There were 4 levels of responsibility. There were leaders of 10 and 50s and hundreds and thousands. And the particular qualifications of these men were that they feared God, they were men of truth, and they hated covetousness. And so Moses had a certain amount of rest from the difficulty of leading such a vast nation. Now, the passage is full of fascinating things. I want to go through some of it with you. I won't comment about everything, but I do want to comment about certain key things. I love in verse 31 where it says the house of Israel called the name thereof manna. It was like coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. It's interesting also that every man, every head of a household, would take an omer. An omer was 3.6 litres, and every day they would collect enough. Now take a look, go back to verse 18, have a look at that. It says, and when they did meet it with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing over, and he that gathered little had no lack. They gathered, every man, according to his eating. Let me say something. While the children of Israel were in the wilderness for 40 years, none of them got fat, and none of them got thin. That's the point. That's what verse 18 is saying. He's saying nobody gathered too much, and nobody gathered too little. The manna was exactly right to sustain their physical health and their weight in the whole of the time that they were in the wilderness. That, for me, is an amazing verse. Take a look also at verse 20. Notwithstanding, they did not listen to Moses. Some of them left it until the morning, but it bred worms and stank. And Moses was wroth with them. You see, he told them very clearly, he said, do not keep any of this over. Do not save it. And the particular lesson here is this, is that the provision of God for their daily sustenance of physical health was fresh every morning. Fresh every morning. And I'd like to make a little point here, is that in a spiritual sense, we as Christians, we must seek the bread of heaven fresh every morning. We need to come to the Lord and open his word and eat of it every day fresh. You cannot keep last Sunday's sermon over till Thursday night and talk about it. It is fresh. It must be fresh. And it must be fresh every morning. There we are. Now then, the next thing of course is water from the rock. It's also very interesting that they have their first major battle. It's Joshua that is the leader in the battle, but it is Moses that is the one that brings the victory, because he is the man of God. He's the one who prays, and while he holds up his hands to the Lord, so the Lord gives them victory. But when his hands are heavy and he ceases to pray, the Amalekites take the victory. So there's a great lesson, isn't it, for all of us, that prayer is the way forward in times of battle. Then we have chapter 18. Now chapter 18 is an absolute conundrum. It is absolutely incredible. There's so many things about it. I mean, first of all, it says, when Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done to Moses and for Israel and his people, and that the Lord had brought them out of the land of Egypt, then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her back, and 2 sons, of which the name of the one was Gershom, for he said, I've been an alien in a strange land, and the name of the other was Eliezer, for the God of my father said he was mine help, and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. Now then, so who was Jethro? Jethro was Moses' father-in-law, but he was priest of Midian. You say, what's that? Is that a Levitical priest? No. This is a Gentile priest. He's not a Jew at all. He's a Gentile priest. And is he a false priest? Not at all. He's not a false priest. The Bible never speaks in a disparaging way of Jethro, the priest of Midian. You say, well, what was his job? Well, as priest of Midian, his job was to offer sacrifice and to intercede on behalf of the people with their covenant God. And you say, what covenant God? Well, he wasn't interceding on behalf of the Israelites. He was interceding on behalf of the Gentiles that he lived with, the people of Midian. Now, this raises lots of fascinating questions. It says, Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and wife unto Moses in the wilderness, where he encamped at the mountain of God. And he said unto Moses, I, thy father-in-law Jethro, am come unto thee, and thy wife and thy 2 sons with her. And Moses went out to meet his father-in-law. And then read what it says. He did obeisance. What's that? It means Moses bowed to the ground and put his head upon his feet. That's what Moses did. You say, how could that possibly be? How could Moses, the greatest leader of the children of Israel, bow to a Gentile priest? That's exactly what happened. Who's the greater of the 2? Moses? No. The greater of the 2 is Jethro, because Jethro is the one that received the obeisance. He says, and he kissed him, and they asked each other of their welfare, and they came into the tent. Isn't that beautiful? And then we go on down. Fascinating. Jethro blesses the Lord. Moses describes the whole deliverance of the children of Israel. Jethro blesses the Lord. He says, blessed be the Lord, who hath delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of Pharaoh, who hath delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know. What does he know? He says, now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods. For in the thing whereon they dealt proudly, he was above them. You see, the Egyptians were very proud people. And they thought they had the military and the political power to hold the children of Israel captive. And what the Lord proved is that he was above them all. And Jethro is receiving his education. He's not receiving his education about being a priest. He's already the priest of Midian. He's receiving his education about Jehovah. He says, now I know that Jehovah is greater than all the gods. And then we see something even more interesting. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifices for God, and Aaron came and all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God. Say, I'm blown away now. I'm blown away. Here we have a Gentile priest. He's a priest of Midian. And he makes a sacrifice to the Lord. And Aaron and all the elders of Israel and Moses come before God. And they see the sacrifice and the burnt offering. And they eat bread with him. That is beautiful. And it enlarges our mind. It makes us realize that there is not just an Israelite world. There's also a Gentile world. And in the Gentile world, God there too has his priests. And what's very interesting is that it was Moses that bowed to Jethro. There you are. So that changes how we view things, isn't it? And then we have this interesting thing where Jethro sees everything that Moses does. And every single person comes to Moses for a judgment about any issue. And Jethro says, what are you doing? What are you doing? You will wear away, verse 18, you and this people. This thing is too heavy for thee. Now that is wisdom. Thou art unable to perform it thyself alone. Listen to me, and I will give thee counsel, and God shall be with thee. Hang on a minute. You've got a Gentile priest giving advice to Moses, the leader of the children of Israel. What sort of advice is that going to be? He says, be thou for the people to Godward, that thou mayest bring the causes unto God, and thou shalt teach them ordinances and laws, and shalt show them the way wherein they must walk, and the work that they must do. Moreover, thou shalt provide out of all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth and hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands, and rulers of hundreds, and rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s. Now notice that a minute. How many rulers does he have? Because the largest number of ruler is thousands. How many children of Israel were there? Probably over 2 million. So there's going to be 2,000 rulers over the children of Israel then, because the largest number here is 1,000. And 1 million, of course, is 1,000,000. Let them judge the people at all seasons, and it shall be that every great matter they will bring to thee, but every small matter they will judge. So shall it be easier for you, and they shall bear the burden with thee. Now, if thou shalt do this thing, listen, if thou shalt do this thing, God command thee so, then thou shalt be able to endure, and all the people shall go to their place in peace. You say, well, that's interesting advice, isn't it? Fancy that. Fancy a Gentile priest coming to Moses, the leader of the children of Israel, and giving him a bit of hearty advice. Now let's look at verse 24. Moses hearkened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he said. Moses chose able men out of Israel and made them heads over the people, rulers of thousands and hundreds and fifties and tens, and they judged the people at all seasons, and hard causes they brought unto Moses, but small matters they judged themselves. And Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went his way into his own land. Now this chapter is absolutely remarkable. There's no reference that Moses ever listened to what the Lord had to say, unless, of course, Moses was listening to what the Lord had to say through Jethro, the priest of Midian. This passage raises a lot of questions. A lot of questions. We tend to think that Israel is there on a pedestal, the height of all the nations, and that Moses was the height of them all. No, that's not how it is at all. Moses is the one that bowed to the dust before Jethro, the priest of Midian, and Moses takes advice from the priest of Midian about how to be the leader of the children of Israel. And what does Jethro say? He says, if you do this, God will bless you. God will bless you. So there you are. There's some fascinating, some interesting insights into the scriptures and into God's ways with men. I look forward to speaking to you again tomorrow. Have a great day. God bless you all. Bye for now.